Hey, it's Jeffrey Gurian here for the Comedy Matters TV podcast, coming to you directly from the stage of the legendary comedy club, The Comic Strip, on 81st and 2nd in the heart of Manhattan. And every week I'm going to be bringing you interesting guests, not only from the comedy world, but from the world of entertainment in general, people who have something positive to say, because I want the show to be the home of positive energy. That's always been my goal, is to put positive energy out to the universe. To counteract all the negativity that's in the world today. There's too much anger, too much hatred, and just I want to carry a positive message. That's the goal of this show.
For the last, 50 years now, this hair has been in comedy rooms and, comedy events, festivals, and everybody always says the same thing. Who the fuck is that guy? And I tell you, it's an honor and a pleasure to speak to this hair and this head.
And you stand the fuck out.
Jeffrey, wonderful to see you. I skipped every other interview. I came straight to here.
I can't say no to you. I've known you my whole career. I can't say no to Jeff. No one can say no to him. Ask him. Who says no to you?
According to Paul Provenza, nobody.
People say to me, it seems like you know everybody in comedy. And I really don't. I just know the people that my circles have been intersected and I've gotten to know. You actually do know everybody in the comedy world, don't you? You really do.
It's crazy, right?
Or even comedians. If you don't know Jeffrey, then you're probably not a comedian. You're not really a comedian.
You're almost like a genetic marker for comedians. They go, do you know Jeffrey Gurian? No, you're not a real comic.
I'm envious of Jeff. It's a righteous thing, man. It really is. Jeff is amazing.
Oh, my co-star.
You're the second coolest dude I know, next to you.
People love you, Jeffrey, and everybody. You have more access to more people than anyone I know in comedy, and it's because people enjoy you.
You're the best, Jeffrey. Thank you so much, buddy. Too, man.
If you don't know who Jeffrey Gurian is, if you've seen someone where you're like, what the fuck is that? That's Jeffrey Gurian.
And here to take you to that happy place is your host, the Doctor of Happiness, the Impresario of Fun, the Maharaja of Merriment, the Czar of Zany, the Ambassador of Amusement, Jeffrey Gurian.
Hey everybody, it's Jeffrey Gurian here, and I'm the host of the Comedy Matters TV podcast, coming to you directly from the stage of the legendary comedy club, The Comic Strip, right in the heart of Manhattan. And with me today as my very first guest, and I'm really excited about this, is the owner and the founder of the Comic Strip, which opened on June 1st of 1976, and it's been going strong ever since, the legendary Richie Tienken. How are you, Rich?
Hi, Jeff.
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you.
Thanks so much for being my first guest, and for
Thank you.
for having me on this stage, this iconic stage. What I was thinking was, I was looking at this book. This is the first comedy club that ever had a book, and I can't believe that we did this book. This came out in 2012, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Can you believe? It's crazy, right? How time flies. And we started the book in 2008. It took 4 years to do this book because of all the stars. It was so hard to coordinate. You remember? And every one of them came into the club. You remember? They all came and sat with us. The first three that I did actually were at the Montreal Comedy Festival, the Just for Laughs Festival. George Wallace was my very first interview, Larry Miller, and then Paul Provenza, all of whom came out of this club and were thrilled to talk about it. And then everybody came in here.
Yeah.
What do you remember about those days when we were meeting at Ray Romano came in, Jim Gaffigan came in, everybody came in to talk about the beginnings of their career at the club?
What I remember is thinking to myself, wow, look at all these guys. But I love this business. I love this club. I built it because of a bartender I had in the Bronx.
I love that story. Tony DeAndrea, right? Now, let me just say that Richie was a bar owner from the Bronx, and at one point owned 6 different bars in the Bronx. And aside from running the biggest bingo hall in the Bronx, wound up managing some of the biggest stars ever in the comedy world. So you left home at 13 years old, is that right?
Yes, I did.
And what made you do that?
Well, in the neighborhood where I lived, there was a car that a guy always left on off as opposed to lock. And if you left your car on off, all you had to do was turn the ignition and the car started. So I decided that I was going to drive.
At 13?
At 13.
Okay.
I must have looked funny. I'm sorry, I can't remember being able to see over the steering wheel. So I used to do it all the time. I'd always bring the car back. I put an ash can in the
street to save the spot?
Right.
We did that too. Me and my friend stole his father's car and we put a garbage can there to save the spot. Yeah.
So then I would come back and I would move the ash can and I would park the car and I'd go home. Except one night, I got caught by the cops. And I don't know if you know the Bronx, but it was up by Clinton High School.
Oh, I know the Bronx. That's where I'm from. Mm-hmm.
And I wound up going to court. And I had a great probation officer. They didn't send me away, but he said to me, look, you have to be in at 7 o'clock every night. And I was like, 7 o'clock is August.
You had a curfew at 7 o'clock in August. Great.
All my friends were coming out. So, of course, I didn't live up to it. As a matter of fact, I used to have to blackmail my brother to come out with me. God bless him, he's dead. But, and he would do it. And what happened was he changed probation officers on me. And I wasn't going to school. I wasn't doing anything. I was just doing what I wanted to do. So when I went to see him, he told me that I had violated my probation and that he was going to recommend to the judge that they said put me away in a reform school. And I was like, why? And he said, well, you know, you're supposed to follow the rules. So I knew I was losing that one, and I said to myself, I'm not going to reform school. So I decided to leave home.
Now, what were your parents thinking about all this, by the way? What were they like? Tell me about your parents.
My father was an electrician.
Yeah?
And my father was a real man's man.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't believe in this juvenile delinquency stuff. My mother was my mother. And I knew that.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew I could talk to my mother. So when I decided I was going to go away, I was going to run away. I went into a restaurant in the Bronx called Neil's, and that's where they would go after my father got off work. And I walked in with a suitcase in my hand.
At 13 years old with a suitcase.
My mother said, what are you doing here, Richard? I said, Ma, they want to send me to reform school, and I'm not going to go, so I'm going to leave. Well, my mother almost fell over. And my father was just sitting there listening. So I said, look at Ma, I know this doesn't make you happy, but I'm not going to reform school. And she didn't want me to leave, but I said, I'm going. So I said, Doug, I love you, and you'll hear from me. I'll make sure I call you. And I turned to my father, and I said, Dad, I've got to go. I can't go to reform school. And he looked at me, and he said, Richard, I've looked into all these places like Warwick, and those are all reform schools. And I just kept looking at him. He said, after looking into them, I understand. Here's $50. That's all I got on me. And I was like, whoa. So off I went to Boston.
And how'd you get there? By bus? Or did you steal another car?
I took a Trailways bus.
A Trailways bus with $50.
And, well, I had $40 on my own. So.
$90 to start a new life at 13 years old.
And I remember distinctly on the bus looking up at God and saying, if you get me through this, I will never screw anybody. And I never have. And I think about that all the time, whenever I have the temptation to do that. So I went to Boston. I stayed in Boston. I stayed at the Copley Hotel, which is where the marathon was, where they had that.
The explosion? Oh, really? Oh, yeah?
It wasn't then, but.
No, of course. And how many years did you end up staying in Boston?
Oh, not long. I took a job selling magazines door to door.
Oh, really?
Well, I needed a job.
And where did you live? A 13-year-old kid. How do you get an apartment? How do you get a place to live?
I lived in a hotel. It was about $40 a night. But I didn't care. I needed a place to live.
So you found a job right away because you only had $90.
I got a job and it was selling magazines and they wouldn't tell you where you were going next until you got in the car to leave. So we get in the car and they say, we're going to Long Island. And I was like, oh, I'm going home. So I got to Long Island. And I decided I wasn't going to sell magazines anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So I came back to the Bronx. And I took a furnished room.
You didn't go back to your parents' house. Now, were these people looking for you to send you to reform school?
I thought I was like public enemy
number one, right? Yeah. You and John Dillinger. There were pictures of you in the post office.
So I went to... I got a furnished room and I got a job delivering groceries. I don't know if you remember the old box with the big basket on the front of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I did. And I made good money because people tipped me good. And I did that and I did whatever I could do to make a buck.
When did you get into the bar scene? How old were you when you got your first bar?
21.
And how'd that come about?
Okay, this is a good story.
They're all good stories. That's
I used to go to an area in Upper Manhattan called Inwood. And back in those days, Inwood was very popular.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a good friend by the name of Jimmy Fallon, who owned a bar in Inwood called The In-Between.
The In-Between? Yeah, okay.
And there was a guy that owned the bar that he had built called E and Cheese. And it was on 10th Avenue under the L. And he wanted to sell it. And I said to him that I was interested. So I said, how much you want? He said, $35,000. But I want $15,000 down.
Mm-hmm.
And I only had about $5,000. So I said, okay. Thinking I'll just go borrow the money.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what happened was, in those days you had jukeboxes in bars and shuffleboard machines. So Dennis Wilson calls me one day and says, Duke McGee wants to meet you.
Dennis Wolfson?
Wilson.
Oh, Wilson, okay.
He's the guy that owned the bar.
Oh, okay.
I said, who's Duke McGee? said he has the jukebox here. He said you should really stay with him because, you know, if you need money, he'll give it to you. So I said, gee, this is interesting. Okay, I'll meet him. So I went in to meet him. And he comes in, he's like, Richie, it's so good to meet you. I just hope you keep me as the jukebox guy. So I said, Duke, let's see if we can work something out. So he says to me, the jukebox, by the way, did about 300 a week, which is real good.
Especially in those days, 300 a week was a lot of money.
3 for a quarter. And you got half, and he got half. So he says, if you need anything, just tell me, and I'll work it out for you. Now, bear in mind, I told you I had the shuffleboard machine. That was his too.
Right.
So I said, well, I do. And he said, well, how much you need? I said, $5,000.
But you really needed 10, right? Yeah, okay. But you told him 5. Okay.
So he says, that's a lot of money. I said, Duke, that $2 does a lot of money. He said, well, you know, you get 50% of that. I said, hey, you can keep the 50% mine. I was more interested in getting the money to buy this place.
Sure.
So he said to me, okay. He said, now I keep everything till I get paid back. I said, yeah, I don't have a problem with that. So he makes up the contract, and he's got this shuffleboard machine on it. So I said, why is this on it? He said, well, you know, I have it too. I said, you do right now. So he said, what do you mean? I said, Duke, this is a different deal. The shuffleboard does about 300 a week, the same. Oh, he goes, well, so I said, give me another 5,000. And you can keep everything. Because I didn't give a shit about $150 a week.
Right. You wanted the 10 grand to buy the bar, sure.
So he agreed. So I got 10 from him, my 5, that was 15. That's how I bought the bar.
And how did you go from one bar? This is what I never understood. Did you own 6 bars at the same time?
No, I owned at the same time. I owned about 4.
4 bars at the same time.
Because I would sell bars.
This is amazing. So you're a bar owner. You're running the biggest bingo hall in the Bronx. How do you come to the comedy world? Now, I know Tony DeAndrea was your bartender in one of the bars, right? And he was doing impressions at the time, right?
The bar I owned that he worked in was called the Bull and Bush.
And
it was on the corner of Jerome and Fordham Road. And Tony was my bartender. And to this day, he's still my best friend. Unfortunately, he's very sick.
He came in for the book, by the way. When we did that, he was in the pictures and all.
He was an impressionist. He did impressions. He did great impressions, but he wasn't funny. He did Rodney, and he did Rodney's jokes. He did.
Yeah, he did whoever's jokes he was doing impressions of, right?
I'm going up at a place downtown called Catch a Rising Star on 77th and 1st. On Monday night, can you come down and see me? And I said, Tony, you know, you're a good guy, but I hate downtown. Why would I want to go down there? But I like Tony, so I said, all right, I'll try to get a couple of guys. And I wound up getting 8 guys.
Now, this was Rick Newman's place.
That's correct.
Right? And that opened, I think, in 72.
Right.
72. It was like the second comedy club in the city. There were only these 2. The Improv was first, but opened that in 63. And then Rick came along at the end of 72. So you went down to see Tony with 8 guys.
Right.
Yeah. And what happened?
It's Monday night.
Monday night, right.
My place is in the Bronx is dead. I walk into this place, it's mobbed. And standing in the corner is David Brenner, and over here is Gabe Kaplan, and over here is Freddie Prinze. And I'm like, what the heck? So we sit down, we start having a couple of drinks. And Tony had told me he was going on at 11:15. So it's 12 o'clock and we're getting drunk. So I called him over and I said, you're supposed to go up at 11:15. It's 12 o'clock, we're getting drunk. You don't need 8 drunk guys from the Bronx here. He said, let me ask Tiana. So he goes and then comes back and says, I just asked Tiana, you're not going to believe what he said. I said, I'll believe it, what he said. He said, I told him I was supposed to go up at 11:15, and it's 12 o'clock, and when am I going up? And I told him I have 9 people here. He said, I'm not worried about customers. And I looked at Tony and said, he's right.
But you never heard anything like that before, because everyone you knew was worried about customers. Yeah. So this is like a Monday night, and he's packed, right?
Mob scene. And so now we're driving home, because Tony didn't have a car, so I drove him. And on the way home, he keeps telling me, you should open a place like this. I'm like, Tony, first of all, I don't even like downtown. Also, I don't know these people. I don't know comics. I don't know anything. Yeah, man, what you should do, and it just bugging me. And I kept telling him, no. Now, the reason is, in those days, most of my bars used bands.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to pay bands $300 on a Friday or $300 on a Saturday.
And how much were they paying comics in those days?
Nothing,
right? Things haven't changed too much, though.
So, finally we get outside of the Bull and Bush, and I said, so look, leave me the fuck alone with this crap. And he said, well, I just think you should do it. So I figured, all right, I got him down. I said, all right, you got people like David Brenner, Gabe Kaplan, and
Freddie Prinze.
How much do they get paid? He says, nothing. I said, nothing. He said, yeah, they just use the place to work out material. So I said, well, now I'm interested.
And 3 years later, you opened up the comic strip, which was a bar, right? It was a bar that had closed.
If I took the sign off outside now, it says Shamrock Bar and Grill.
Shamrock Bar and Grill. And I remember this story where you were riding down the avenue in a taxi cab, and you saw this place that said it was closed, and you went and made a deal with the Eberhardt brothers, right? The Eberhardt brothers. And I remember that you had given the original contractor about $15,000, right?
Ganty.
And he disappeared with the money.
Took the money and never saw him again.
Never saw the guy again, and the place almost didn't open.
I went around to the landlord and told him I had to get out of them.
Out of the lease, right? You had already signed a lease, and the contractor steals all your money.
And he said, why? And I said, well, I don't have any money. I lost the contractor. And he said, Richie, are you worried about building it? I said, yeah, I don't have any money. I said, I can't afford it. He said, his name is David Eberhardt. He said, Richie, I'm an architect. If you meet me every morning at 7 o'clock, I'll tell you what you all to call, what you need. And that's what I did. That's how we built the club.
And you brought in all these workmen, and they wound up building the club. And was Lucian involved in those days, in the very early days?
Lucian was my Finnish carpenter.
The Finnish carpenter, right? He's the guy that put the grooves in the walls, right? With a screwdriver, right? Yeah, he was a Broadway dancer.
He was a Broadway dancer. Lucian looked like Robert Collet.
Exactly. Yeah. He could have worn a cape and smoked one of those pipes that had a big curve, like from the old English days, right? That's the kind of guy he was.
Lucian was great.
Lucian Hold.
My 2 partners didn't like Lucian because he didn't take any crap from them. But Lucian always listened to me.
Well, he was the face of the club for 25 years. While you were in L.A. with Eddie Murphy, you taught Lucian how to run the club.
I used to book the club over the phone with him until it dawned on me that he knows what he's doing. Let him do it.
Let him do it. And did it ever bother you that people thought he owned the club?
Not at all.
Because for so many years, while you were away and all, he was the face of the club. Everyone, the comic strip and Lucian Hold were connected.
Let me tell you something. Lucian had a brain. He knew exactly who was right, who was wrong, who was good, who was bad.
And he wasn't a comedian.
No, not at all. Same as I'm not.
He wasn't even that funny.
The comics didn't think he was funny. But
well, he was very direct, and at his memorial service, the place was packed. Yeah. Unfortunately, he left us. He had scleroderma, which was a terrible, terrible thing. He was in a lot of pain, but he always showed up.
He called me one day at home, and I said, "What's up?" He said, "I want to apologize." So I said, "Apologize for what?" He said, "Well, I don't go in that much anymore." So I said, "Lucian, let me ask you a question." He said, "What?" I said, "Are the shows booked?" He said, "Yeah, they're done for the next 2 weeks." I said, "Well, stay home. It's okay if you don't come in." So he said to me, I'm laughing, I'm sorry. He said, "Richie, if there's anything I can do for you, please tell me." So I said, "There is." And he said, "What?" I said, "Don't die."
Mm.
He said, "Well, I don't think I can do anything about that."
Yeah. He tried his best.
So I said, "Well, anyway, a few weeks later, I got a phone call. My wife came in and said that one of the comics was on the phone that was close to Lucian. And I looked at my wife, I said, "Lucian's dead." So that's what had happened.
Mm.
I got on the phone with the comic, and he said, "Lucian died this morning."
I remember he was losing tips of his fingers. I used to go in the little office, your office, which was the old coat room, and I would sit with him and I would try to do healing work on him to take away some of the pain because he was in a lot of pain, and it was just terrible. He did one of the nicest things for me. I don't know if you ever knew this story, but he was very strict about what went on stage. Very, very strict. And I was doing this comedy news thing at the time. A bizarre thing like Monty Python kind of news. And I had it on, several men were arrested for smearing cream cheese on the ankles of elderly women who wore their stockings rolled down like bagels. You ever see the old women with the stockings around their ankles? Look like bagels to me. And I got my dear grandmother to let me actually put cream cheese on her ankles. And I filmed this. It's how I got up to Saturday Night Live. I brought all these crazy films with me. But Lucian was nice enough to let me show it at the club one night, in the middle of a stand-up act. Now it seems absurd. I would never even ask anybody to do that. But that's how nice he was, that he introduced it. He took all the cameras. You shoot everything. You record everything. He let me come up on the stage and use the video system because the audience had to see the films, and that was the nicest thing that he did. He was just such an amazing guy.
Lucian ran a picnic every year up at his house.
Mm-hmm.
We invited all the acts. Lucian was also a good golfer.
Oh, I heard that. Yeah, he was a good golfer. So tell me about Eddie Murphy. How did this come about? Because this is the wildest story. A bar owner from the Bronx winds up managing the biggest star in show business.
Eddie, there was an act by the name called Bob. His name is Bob Nelson. Now, my partner, I had two partners. One was John McGowan, who was a douchebag, and Bob Wax, who was an asshole.
You sure you want this on the podcast?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
And by the way, his wife's an asshole, too.
Okay.
But Bob Nelson said to me, you know, I'm in a group called the Identical Triplets.
The Identical Triplets. Bob Nelson is Epi Epperman. He does all those characters. He's still performing. Yeah.
And his partner was Rob Bartlett.
Rob Bartlett, right?
So I said to him, well, who's the third guy? He said he's a comic. His name is Eddie Murphy. Now, I'm thinking, being from the Bronx, oh, he must be an Irishman.
An Irish guy, right? From Eddie Murphy, of course. Yeah.
So I said, because I thought Bob had a good head, I said, tell him to come in next Monday night, and I'll watch him. This was just to put him up on stage.
Mm-hmm.
So I forgot that Monday night, that was audition night. I did it that night because if he's not good, I can just say, see ya. But I forgot that night I wasn't going to be there. Bob Wax was going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
So Monday happens, and I get a call on Tuesday from Bob Nelson. And I said, what's up? He said, Eddie wants to apologize. And I said, oh, shit. I said, well, why? Thinking he'll tell me why.
Mm-hmm.
He said, because of what happened. And I'm like, oh, you're not going to tell me, okay. I said, okay. And I said, Bob, I'll call you back. And I hung up, and I called Bob Wax. Bob Wax thought he was like the biggest big shot in New York. And I said, let me ask you a question. Was there a kid there the other night called Eddie Murphy? Bob says, yeah, I threw him out. I said, you threw him out? He said, yeah. He came in and he walked up to me. He asked for the owner, and I said, I'm the owner. And he said, well, when am I going up? And Bob said, you'll go up when I want you to go up.
Mm.
If you don't like it, you can get out. So Eddie left.
Mm.
So I called Bob Nelson back, and I said, listen, I fucked this up. I said, this wasn't Eddie's fault. It was my fault. I wasn't there. Tell him to come in next Monday, and I'll make sure I'm there. So next Monday, Eddie came in, said to me, hi, I'm Eddie Murphy. I said, I'm Richie. I'm the guy you're supposed to ask for.
So you had him perform for you that night?
Went up that night, and I thought he was a riot.
Mm. And he was only like 19 years old in those days, right? He was a baby. Yeah.
And he did real good. He just, when he got off, I said, you know, you can work here any time you want. You know.
And did he start working here regularly from that time on?
Yeah.
You started booking him?
And one thing led to another, and we just, I liked Eddie.
Well, was he already a featured player on SNL, or did that happen while you were together?
That happened before I managed him.
Before you managed him?
Fort Lauderdale.
In Fort Lauderdale. Oh, right. You had a club down there as well, right? You opened a club, and Eddie came down to stay at the
condo.
At the condo.
They called it a condo, but it was a house because I used to rent condos for the acts. And the problem was the condo association wouldn't rent to me anymore because the acts ruined the place.
Because of what?
The acts ruined.
Because the acts ruined the place. Yeah, they would trash the place, right?
So what I did was I bought a house.
Mm-hmm.
With a swimming pool. And I had 2 apartments. One was for the acts, the other I kept. So Eddie had already auditioned for Saturday Night Live, and they passed on him.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Well, the year that Gene Dumanian was producing the show, that's the year that he became a featured player. Is that correct?
That's correct.
He became a featured player.
So what happened was I'm in Fort Lauderdale. I was there for about 2 weeks. Eddie was there. And I get a phone call Oh, they had hired an act by the name of Charlie Barnett.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted a black guy because of,
Diversity.
well, the guys from the old cast.
Oh, Tim Meadows,
No,
right? No.
the old cast.
Gee, I thought Tim was the old cast.
Along with Aykroyd and Belushi and them.
Oh, I know who you mean. I can't think of his name. I'm blanking on his name. Yeah, yeah. I could picture his face, but I can't think of his name.
So they hired
Charlie Barnett.
Charlie Barnett.
Yeah, but wasn't it the case that he couldn't read, right?
Well, that's what happened.
Yeah.
So she said, this is SNL. We'd like to see Eddie. And I said, you already saw him. Now, I didn't manage him, but I managed anybody that was my comic. Cause,
It just came naturally to you, right?
you know. So she said, well, we fired him. So I said, well, why? And to her credit, she said, I'd rather not say.
Oh, okay.
But we want to see Eddie. And I said, okay, when? She said, tomorrow morning, about 11 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
I said, honey, we're in Fort Lauderdale. She said, well, we'd really like to see him. So what I see is that one of my acts is going to get on Saturday Night Live.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be good for the club.
Absolutely.
So I go out to Eddie, who's sitting by the pool, and I said to him, you can read, right?
Just double checking. Right?
Well, because I had already called Piscopo to find out he had the show.
Mm-hmm.
Why they fired Charlie. And he said he couldn't read.
Oh, so you were close with Joe Piscopo already.
Yes.
Was Joe, he was one of the guys who was performing here at the time?
Yeah, he was really an improv act, but he would come. I use all the improv acts too. So he told me he couldn't read. I was like, oh. So I walked out there and I said, I want to ask you something. He said, what? I said, can you read?
He must have thought you were out of your mind. Can you read?
He said, yeah, I can read. I said, well, SNL wants to see you. Oh, they already fucking saw me. I said, it doesn't matter. They want to see you. Well, I said, they fired Barnett. And the woman told me that you were always their second choice. Which, by the way, second choice is not a bad thing.
No, not a bad thing at all.
And he told me, fuck them, I'm having a good time down here.
Really? That's amazing.
So I said, Eddie, you can't pass on this. This is Saturday Night Live. This is a big thing. Look at these guys, Eddie Aykroyd, they're all big stars now.
And this is around 1986, I would assume, right? 85, 86, something like that? Because the show had already been on for about 10 years. Yeah. So it was a big hit.
So he says, well, I really don't want to go back. And I said, Eddie, I have to go back, so I'll make a deal. I'll get us on a plane tomorrow morning. I want to leave. I've been here 2 weeks. I want to go back. I said, you go to SNL, I'll go home. And I got him to agree to that. And that's what we did. We went back, he went to SNL.
And so they accepted him as a featured player. And then I remember this great story that one night they needed somebody to stretch. They needed somebody to do 5 minutes. And Joe Piscopo was a big fan of Eddie's. And they had asked Joe to do the 5 minutes, right?
That's correct.
But then he said, why don't you use Eddie?
Yeah.
And then Eddie called you in a panic. And tell us the story, what he said. He was nervous because he curses, right?
He said to me, they just asked me to do 5 minutes. I said, oh, that's great. He said, I can't do it. I said, why not? He said, I curse so much.
And then you said?
I said, Eddie, just say friggin'. What do you mean? I said, every time you think of say fuck, say friggin'. Knowing that he wouldn't be able to do it.
Right.
But I didn't care. But the country is going to see Eddie Murphy.
Sure.
So he did it. And of course he cursed his way right through, and they didn't have the delay back then.
So it went out on the air. He actually cursed, and they didn't fire him from the show. But when his time came up for the contract to be renewed, I know that you were the one who got him to be a full contract player because you went in and met with Gene, right?
I was in the hallway up at SNL, and Gene Dominion came walking down. And I said, hi, Gene. And she said, oh, hi, Richie. I said, yo, what's up? She said, I'm just going around telling everybody whether they're going to be back or not next year. Would you do me a favor? And I said, yeah. She said, well, would you tell Eddie that I want him to come back next year? So I said, as what? She said, what do you mean? I said, as a featured player or a cast member. There's a little part to this story I didn't tell you.
But you were already managing him at this point, right? And we'll get into that as well, because I know when he first asked you, you turned him down.
Oh, I turned him down a couple of times.
But tell me the part that got left out.
When the contract was made up to manage him, actually, I'm sorry, I was managing them. Hey, I'm 75, I don't remember so much.
You're doing great. You remember a lot so far.
Bob Wax made the contract out for 20%, and I wouldn't take it because he's making $750 a week, and I'm gonna get $75.
Mm-hmm.
If Eddie just came to the comic strip, I made money. So he called me one night, and he said, I want to talk to you. I said, okay, why don't you come to the club? So he came up, and we went outside. And I said, what's up? He said, you know, I was talking to the guys up at SNL, and they all pay their managers 15%, not 20%. So I said, so you want to make it 15% instead of 20%? He said, yeah. I said, all right, let me do some math. 20% of nothing is nothing. 15% of nothing is nothing. I said, are you aware of the fact that I don't take any of your money? He said, no, I've never said that. I said, well, I don't. But we'll make it 15%, but I'll tell you this. When you start making some money, I'm going to take my commission. He said, hey, that's okay. So that's how I told him he became a cast member. So getting back to Gene Dominion, I said to her, as what? She said, a feature player. I said, Gene, he saved his show.
Mm-hmm.
If he hadn't done that 5 minutes, he had nothing that night. She said, okay, we'll make him a cast member, which was $3,000 a week.
Mm-hmm.
So I called him up. I said, guess what? He said, what? I said, I'm taking my commission.
You had $3,000 a week. Now it's worth it. Sure, of course. Of course. And he stayed with you for the first 11 years of his career through Beverly Hills Cop 1, I think, and 2 as well, right? Weren't you actually in his a couple of his specials, Raw or Delirious?
I'm in Delirious. I'm also the person that picked out the red suit.
Oh, really? The red leather suit. Well, Eddie was the Elvis of comedy. No one had ever dressed like that before. No one ever.
You want to hear how it happened?
Sure.
We were in Washington getting ready to film Delirious.
Mm-hmm.
And Eddie's a big Elvis fan, always was.
What made you film it in Washington, by the way? You remember why?
Well, because it was a Constitution Hall was a very prestigious.
Oh, prestigious hall, Constitution Hall, sure, yeah.
So he says to me, I wish I could wear clothes like Elvis. So I said, well, why don't you? He said, because I don't want to wear all that sparkly stuff. What Eddie didn't know was, do you know who Elvis got that from?
Who?
Liberace.
Really? I never knew that. Really? He was inspired by Liberace.
The way Liberace dressed.
Uh-huh.
So I understood that, and I said to Eddie, what kind of material do you like? And he said leather. So I went to a leather store. And they had a red jacket. And they didn't have the pants for the jacket. They had a pair of red pants that was close. So I called HBO. And I said, look, I have an outfit for him. It's a red jacket, and the pants are a little off. They said, oh, we can fix that. So I bought him it.
Wow. So you actually bought it. You found it and bought it for him. And then HBO fixed it up so that it matched.
But if you look close, it doesn't.
It doesn't. But nobody would ever notice that.
Nobody ever noticed it. But that's how the red outfit happened.
That's amazing. And then you appeared at the end of one of the specials, right?
No, at the movie.
In the movie.
I'm in Up Delirious in the beginning with Eddie on the bus and everything.
When did you wind up in L.A. on the Paramount lot? Was that when he was doing Beverly Hills Cop? You had an office on the Paramount lot?
48 hours.
48 hours, okay.
Eddie was a big star at the Paramount. When he did 48 hours, everybody, Nick Nolte, and I mean, Eddie was, I remember one story. Paramount wanted to take they wanted to take a picture of all their stars, which is Tom Cruise and
Dustin Hoffman?
Indiana Jones.
Oh, Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford.
Yep.
And Eddie didn't want to take it.
Why not?
Because he was Eddie.
Okay.
So I said to him, you have to do this. He said, I don't want to get it. I said, Eddie. So the next thing I know, I'm sitting in my office, and Tom Cruise walks in. And he says to me, hi, I'm Tom Cruise. And I said, yeah, you are.
You reaffirmed that to him, huh?
He said to me, I want to talk to Eddie because I understand he doesn't want to be in the picture, but he really should be. So I said, all right, Tom, let me, I said, he's busy right now, and he was in his office with a girl. When I tell you the name of the girl, you're going to laugh. You're supposed to ask me.
Oh, yeah, well, I'm waiting to hear. What's the name of the girl?
Whitney Houston.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, and when this is how sick this guy was.
Yeah.
When he was done with Whitney, I said to him, so how'd you like being with Whitney Houston? Eddie's answer was, I don't like her feet.
Her feet? Yeah.
I said, what? Turns out if you have ugly feet, Eddie ain't interested.
He's not into that. So let's move up more into the present. In recent times, Jerry Seinfeld came back to the club to do his Netflix special here.
That's good.
Right? Now, I know it took us months when we had Jerry come in to do the book. Right. Even though he wanted to do the book, it took a long time to schedule him. It's not easy scheduling all these people, which is why it took 3 years to do all the interviews, because I did every single interview and transcribed it myself. I don't want anybody else to do it. And Jerry, we actually waited a long time until he came in. But it was a big surprise. Tom Papa was the one who finally made the call that got Jerry to come in for the book, right? But it was a big surprise to everybody that he wound up doing his Netflix special here. And as a favor to him, I actually kept it a secret. He asked me not to say anything to anybody because he was working out material. Tell me about how that came about, and was that a big surprise to you?
I was surprised by it only because Jerry, whenever he was in New York, didn't come here. That's where he started. He went to Gotham and to the Cellar and to all these other clubs. And no other club in New York can claim what I can claim. The people that started it.
Right, from 1976 to 1980 till he went to L.A., he basically lived here. He was here all the time.
Every day.
And he was the first, he became a host, I think, fastest of anybody ever in this club.
He got paid $15 to host the show.
Mm-hmm.
Jerry. That's why it's called Jerry Before Seinfeld. Because this was Jerry. I had to loan him videos that I have of his act before.
Before he did the show Seinfeld.
So, and he did a lot of those jokes on Jerry Before Seinfeld.
Right, he did a lot of his earliest material, which is why he wanted to do it from this club.
But I have to tell you, Jerry's having Jerry do this Netflix special has helped this place tremendously. I got a lot of publicity out of it. And Adam Sandler, he did a portion of it.
Oh, I want to talk about Adam as well. But Jerry's thing was so special. It was the first really big show that was done from here.
That's good.
And again, as you said, he hadn't been to the club for so many years. So it was just interesting. And I saw him working out one night at Gotham. Right? And he said to me, Jeffrey, please don't tell anybody that I'm going to be doing my special at the comic strip. And I promised him that I wouldn't, because to me, a confidence is more important than getting a scoop. You know, I've been covering the comedy scene since 1999. That's when I started Comedy Matters. And it started as a zine, and then, and then I started doing videos, Comedy Matters TV. So I would always write about what's happening. But I honored that, and he appreciated it because he thanked me afterwards. I was here that night with George Wallace. We watched that show together, and the place was absolutely packed. There were lines around the block of people waiting to get in. How'd you feel when you first found out that Jerry wanted to come back here to do the special?
I thought it was great. I just, the club. Because of my partners, the club went through a lot of difficulty. Which, this has always been my home. I love this club. But we had a lot of debt and a lot of things that had to the point that I didn't get paid for a couple of years. But even at that point, it didn't matter. After Jerry did his special, things started happening. Business picked up, even now.
Yeah, weekends here are packed. Yeah. Absolutely packed.
And that's all because of Jerry Seinfeld and Adam Sandler.
Well,
and the only comic that really stayed loyal to the club was Chris Rock. Because he would come in and do a set, and we'd be sold out. But
well, I want to talk about that story too, but I just want to say there were a couple of years when you weren't here because you were sick.
That's good.
Right? And I've always called you the godfather of comedy, but I always say now you really speak like the godfather of comedy because thank God you survived throat cancer.
My God.
Right? Which is, knock wood, an absolute miracle that they didn't have to make a hole in your throat and that people can understand you.
I just tell people, hey, God didn't like the way I sang, but he lets me talk.
Yeah, he lets you talk, right? And I remember going with you to the hospital when you had to wear that iron mask, that metal mask to get chemo and radiation. And thank God, look, you've been back ever since. But that's when you took back ownership of the club. Other people were running it for you while you were away. And I think that had a big effect on the club. And then you came back. And when you came back, that's when we decided to do the book on the club, which at the time is the only club that has a book about its history because it has such an incredible history. Now, talk about Adam Sandler for a minute. Adam Sandler, I think you managed him also for a while, and that's a really nice story.
Adam needed a manager, and I was good friends with a guy by the name of Barry Moss, who died since then. And Barry used to book the Cosby Show.
Mm-hmm.
So I said to Barry, Adam wants me to manage him, but I'm not interested really in that. You want to do it with me? Now, Barry booked Adam onto the Cosby Show.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened was Adam Adam has a father named Stanley.
Mm-hmm.
Stanley was great. I used to play golf with Stanley in Florida. And Adam started getting bigger. So
As a result of doing the Cosby Show?
That's correct.
And he had also been performing here, right? But in the early days, he was playing a guitar. He was singing crazy songs, right? This was before SNL.
Yes.
Before he got SNL.
What happened with me and Adam was I put Adam up. And I said, I should go and listen to him. So I went in here. I came in here and I started listening to him. And what I realized was he didn't have any jokes. But the audience liked him.
Yeah, he was.
A great personality. So I took him into my office and I said to him, look, I'm going to book you. And he was like, oh, thank you. I said, but you have one problem. He said, what? I said, you need jokes. He said, oh, I'll get them. And what he did was he had a bunch of guys from college who came early, and they all wrote for Adam and still do.
Mm-hmm.
And they wrote an whole act for him.
Well, when he came back to the club, that followed Jerry Seinfeld's Netflix special. Then Adam decided to do his Netflix special here. But it was a secret. You didn't even know till the last minute.
Not at all.
They kind of played a little trick on you. They didn't want it. Your wife, Jeannie, played a trick on you and didn't tell you.
She said to me, when you come in tonight, dress nice. And of course I said, Jeannie, I always dress nice. She said, no, you don't. So when I got here, I saw Netflix all over the place because I knew it was them because of Jerry. And I'm like, what the fuck is Netflix?
Right.
So I came in and I walked over to Jeannie and I said, why is Netflix here? And she said, come here. And she took me into the back room and Adam was sitting there. And he looked at me and went, hey, Richie, how you doing?
And he hadn't been in the club for 30 years.
So I looked at him and said, what the fuck are you doing here? He said, oh, I'm doing my Netflix special. I was like, okay.
Amazing. Why didn't they want you to know?
That was a surprise to me.
Just a surprise, huh? It was amazing. And I don't know if you've seen his new movie, Uncut Gems. He plays an incredible part. It's a really great movie. He's such a good actor, not only comedically, but as a regular dramatic actor.
Well, the Academy doesn't look at it that way. They look at it like he's a comedian.
Unfortunately, I know that's how they judge.
Yes,
Comedians never get the respect that they deserve. Meanwhile, everybody says they love comedy, but when it comes down to award time, they get overlooked very often. So in our last few minutes, it's amazing, and I would probably want to have you back again. There are so many stories that we could go on and on, but in the last few minutes, I want to mention our books for the club, because people who listen to this, there's so much more in these books. Great stories from everybody. Chris Rock, of course, Jerry Seinfeld, Billy Crystal, who was on stage the very first night that the comic strip opened.
That's right.
Billy Crystal. I went out to his office in Beverly Hills to interview him. Everybody else came in the club. Paul Reiser was here, Gilbert Gottfried, who we had to take out to lunch, remember? And then claimed through the whole interview that he had never been in the club. He said he heard it had great electricity and that they had one chair and the comedians would take turns sitting in that chair. It was a typical Gilbert interview. Jackie Martling is in here, Louis Black, Judah Friedlander, Larry Miller, George Wallace, Jeffrey Ross, Jim Brewer, just on and on. Rick Overton, Adam Ferrara. And we got great blurbs on the book from Judd Apatow, the king of Hollywood, Richard Lewis, Elaine Boozler, Nick Kroll, Bob Saget, Tom Papa, who, again, as Richie said, was influential in getting Jerry to come in. And so then a few years ago, they did a second version of the book called Laughing Legends, which was an updated version of Make 'em Laugh with a lot of new photos in it and updated stories, because in this first edition, when we interviewed Colin Jost, he was not yet the head writer on Saturday Night Live. Jordan Rock had just been starting out. He wasn't yet on Judd Apatow's show Love and doing all the things that he's doing. As a matter of fact, Jordan and I were the first late night hosts that you ever allowed to host. You never had hosts on late night, but Jordan and I used to have Sunday and Monday, and he had Tuesday and Wednesday. We used to host late night. And
You should tell them what late night is.
Late night is an opportunity for young comedians who are just starting out to work out material. And you can't just come up and do late night. You actually have to be passed in order to do late night. But all the people that did late night in the days when I was hosting, Sam Morrell and Anthony DeVito and Suba Agarwal, they're all doing cool things. They're all writing for TV and performing all over the place. It's really a fantastic opportunity for a lot of young comics.
And also, I realized that in order to get better, you need to have an audience.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell the audience that if they stay for late night, I'll give everybody a ticket.
A ticket, right, for another show.
Yeah.
Right, and for a free drink. Yeah, it used to be great. We would depend on the audience from the last show to stick around for late night, and made it comfortable for them to do that. And that's how comedians get their experience, because it works better if you have an audience, right? I always say that. And lastly, I want to talk about my newest book. I wound up with 6 books. I don't even know how that happened. But it's a book about happiness, and it hit bestseller status on Amazon. It's currently a bestseller on Amazon with 111 mostly 5-star reviews. And it's called Healing Your Heart by Changing Your Mind, a spiritual and humorous approach to achieving happiness. And it's about learning to change the way you think, letting go of negative thoughts, not holding on to resentments. It's a very spiritual outlook, nothing to do with religion, just to do with spirituality and a different way of thinking. I used it on myself to cure myself of a very severe stutter that I had through my 20s and beyond. I stuttered so badly that I couldn't say my name. And I used this method that I talk about in the book to change a thought. All of us are holding thoughts that are not particularly valid for us. They're thoughts very often that were given to us by people who didn't have our best interests at heart. And every single one of us is holding on to pains from our childhood. Every time someone hurt your feelings in some way, broke a promise to you, broke up with you in a relationship, I call those things heart wounds, and we carry them inside of us, and they affect our self-esteem and our self-confidence, and they affect every decision that we make, because every time you're called upon to make a decision in your life, you use your thoughts to figure out what to do. And if your thoughts are faulty, your decisions are not going to work. And that's why so many people go through life experiencing the same things over and over again, these patterns where things don't seem to work out for them. So I don't know if it's the picture of the dog in lotus position on this book. People seem to be resonating with it. It's got great reviews from psychologists, psychiatrists, people in the healing world. I even let Richard Lewis, who's the only comedian that I put on the cover, he goes, get your hands on this book if you're looking for a proven way to achieve healing at the heart level with a twist of humor. And so it's available as an ebook, as a paperback, and also as an audiobook. And with that, I want to thank Richie Tienken, my first guest, for coming on. It was a wonderful way to start this podcast. I really appreciate your support. I appreciate all your help and the fact that you allow me to do it from the legendary stage of the comic strip. Thank you so much, Richie.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
You're very welcome. And so I want you to guys tune in every week. We're going to have a very special guest. My producer, I want to thank Tone Vieira for his hard work. And every week you're going to see somebody really cool up here on the stage of the comic strip in the heart of Manhattan. Thanks so much, and I look forward to seeing you again. I'm out.